Hey guys, Brendan Legger-Wood here, author of the 3+1 Plan and chairman of YPC Group, where we help you to build a thriving property portfolio so you can live the lifestyle you've always dreamed of, but in such a way that you're not creating a second job or actually working yourself into an early grave. So what I wanted to do today was we've been running the webinars now for a while, and we've compiled hundreds of questions that you guys have been asking. So I want to take those, and what I've done is I've broken them down into a number of really key questions that most of you guys are repeatedly asking. And what I've done is I want to present them to you so you get that level of education. I've always been a massive supporter of free education. And so that's what I want to do for you guys today, is really give you, I guess, what most people out there are concerned about in the market now, about property investment, about strategies, about structures, about all sorts of things, the questions that you guys have been asking. So, it's not now me telling you what you should be thinking, it's you guys actually feeding back. And I love that about the social media, and I love that about webinars. So yeah, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Today's question, guys, it's actually a really good question. It's one that I get a lot of, especially people that have read a lot about, from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, through a lot of the property gurus. Because what they do is they almost sell you on a false sense of everything should be cash flow positive, and it's not, you shouldn't invest in it. And whilst, look, I'm all for cash flow positive, and I'm not saying anything about here that you shouldn't be aiming for cash flow positive property. What I'm saying is you need to look at what the market is and actually then invest based on that. Because the problem is, by making a blanket statement from that, when I'm standing on stage and I've got 500 people in front of me, I can very easily say, only buy cash flow positive. And everyone goes, wow, that's amazing. And to be fair, that's an amazing statement, but try and back it up in reality and try and do the deals. And actually what you'll find is that you end up backing yourself into a little obscure corner of property, okay, that is high income property. But the issue is, and we'll talk about it, is that may not be the best possible use of your time and energy and efforts and your capital. Because what we're after is a return on investment, okay, not necessarily just a cash flow positive. Cash flow positive is very good. It's a very, romantic term. But the reality is, it's not necessarily the reality for the broad base clients and properties. So what I much prefer is a much more realistic view of things. So let's have a look. So the question was simply, cash flow positive from day one. And what this client was talking about was, and the question they were asking was, actually it was a statement. It wasn't even a question. The question or the statement was, I only want cash flow positive properties from day one. Great, fantastic, and I can give you that. The problem is, if I give you that, what happens when the market changes? So what I want to look at, is look, it's a noble idea, fantastic idea, and yes, we should all aim for it, and it would be wonderful. But what I tend to find is most of my properties and most of the properties that I sell in the sort of broad range, every person house, that most of the clients get, and this is not just properties that we supply, but certainly the vast majorities of property in the UK market, and in fact the Australian market and the American market, and in fact most markets around the world, they aren't cash flow positive on a month-to-month basis, okay? Certainly with the levels of leveraging that we, most people aim at when they're starting out. Okay, so, it's a great noble idea, and by all means go for it. It also depends on the type of property, and I want to talk a bit about the property first, because what you're going to find is, depending on the type, if you're going to go for high-value penthouses, and let's just deal with the UK market here, but this holds true across most of the westernized democratic economies that speak English, okay? And even to a degree, Asian economies and a few other things like that. So really, this sort of holds true, this principle. And the principle is this, that what you find is stuff that has the high growth potential has a lower income potential. The stuff that has the high income potential has a lower growth potential. So it's about striking a balance, because I can tell you, growth will get you there quicker, okay, as long as you can afford the income side. Now, what I mean by that is this, okay? If you just go after high income producing assets, fantastic. But because they're generally the ones that don't have the capital growth necessarily attached to them, what that means is that you're going to be waiting around to get your capital back. It's a lot easier to get capital growth to fund a bit of a shortfall through certain periods, and then to get the capital growth, because that capital allows you to buy more, build your portfolio bigger. So when you get a 10% growth or a 5% growth, your entire portfolio is going up. So it really depends on this. Now, things like HMO student lets, one of the other things that a lot of people don't factor in is they look at the sheer numbers. What they don't look at is the effort you have to put into them. See, most of my portfolios, I couldn't tell you who the tenants are, where the properties are, nothing about them. I've never seen them. I don't know anything about them except that I get X amount of rent in and there's this much mortgage and the service charge comes out generally every month as a standing order or a direct debit. So really, I've got no emotional attachment to them. I can't have. I don't know anything about them. They're just numbers, okay? So I put very little effort in. Versus, say, a student let, that might be, you might have problems with the students, you might have to find a good agent, which can take ages and be very difficult, you know, or lo and behold, if you want to manage it yourself, that's a whole nother bucket of, you know, thing. So really, it depends on these sort of things. Now, I want to come back to this because this is probably the biggest mistake people make, and it's what gurus and salespeople, you know, when I talk about the hype and BS, okay, this is what ends up happening, is they make everything look like day one it's going to be cash flow positive. So you go, wonderful. But they're taking a snapshot in the market now. They're not looking at the long-term market. You're going to be holding this property for 7 to 10 or more years. Now, because of that, you're going to realize that you're going to be through a market where interest rates will change, okay? So interest rates may be very low now, they may shoot up. You know, now let's ask the question, at this point, if it's cash flow positive, is it going to be cash flow positive at this point? And most probably not, because what you'll find is most properties in the broad market that you're going to deal with, okay, unless you want to go down to the obscure ends or go into some specialty properties, okay, you're going to find that actually when interest rates are low, you're going to be some cash flow positive. When interest rates are high, you're probably not going to be, okay? Given your leverage, okay? So obviously if you're getting a 50% loan to value, you're probably going to be cash flow positive all the time. But then is that the most effective use of your capital? Probably not, okay? Certainly when you're starting out. So you've got to take into account this property cycle. If you don't, then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be buying a property based on unrealistic expectations that it's cash flow positive now and it will continue to stay that way. It won't necessarily be the case. Now, what we do and what I always talk about whenever I'm talking about cash flow positive properties, because one of my biggest bugbears in this industry, and it's not just in this country, in UK, it's actually all around the world. Salespeople and gurus, they're hype and BS. What they'll do is they'll tell you what the rent is, they'll tell you what the mortgage is, and that's what they consider cash flow positive. As long as the rent is more than the mortgage, that's cash flow positive. It's not, okay? Yes, it may be on a monthly basis. You may get £100 cash in. But if all the expenses, void periods, and all those sort of things, okay, aren't factored in, okay, and what I suggest is we do a 2-year cash flow. I suggest you do them in 2-year periods. So you do a 2-year cash flow. It's a realistic time to look at that property. If it's not cash flow positive based on that time period, then it's not cash flow positive. And then the other thing is all the expenses have to be included. Void periods, you know, your ground rent, service charges, buildings insurance, gas safety certificates, anything like that. Maintenance if you need to, okay, if you want to put that in. That's one of the optional ones because maintenance can be done probably every 5 years to 7 years. So you can actually allow the capital growth that you'll get, all right, to take care of that if you want. But anyway, so the final thing is this, and this is probably one of the biggest distinctions between how we operate and how the rest of the market operates, because they won't do this, yeah? What they'll do is they'll find the cheapest mortgage on the market and say it's currently 3.99, and they'll do your interest rate at that. The problem is you might have that interest rate for 2 years. What happens then? Then it goes to 6% or it goes to whatever. You're not fully factoring that in. What we do is we use mortgage cost averaging, which basically says that we're going to look and say if this is 3.99, we choose 6%, which generally is for the UK, it's 6%. For Australia, it's 8%. For South Africa, it might be 13%. For the US, it might be 6% again. Okay, so we choose, and mortgage cost averaging will change. But what it does, it says rather than look at what the rate you're paying now is, calculate it at the mortgage cost average, the average across all markets. So you're looking into the future and you're saying, actually, interest rates may go up, but at least if I'm actually paying this today, paying that much today, but I'm allowing for that much, then when it goes to here, it doesn't matter because the buffer I created here, I've got to use there. And that's the key to holding your portfolio over a long period of time, and that's where true cash flow positive property across the whole market comes in. Not the hype and BS that most salespeople are selling, which is calculated on the lowest rate and then just assume it's going to stay that way. It isn't, okay? And all it means is that if you've got one property, okay, you can probably wear it. But if you've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 properties, you better believe that you better be doing this stuff. This is what experienced people do, okay? You need to do it. You get it up front, learn it up front, start using it on your very first property, and then you'll be able to hold through any market, okay? You can, face the future without fear. So, this is really important stuff, and it's something that, you just got to change in your brain and not listen to the hype and BS that's out there about cash flow positive, because it's mistaken, it's misleading, it's mis-selling. So guys, I'm sure you found that information really valuable. The first step really now is that you need to get a plan. You need to actually, work out exactly how you're going to put this in place. So what I encourage you to do is come in and sit down with us, talk to us, grab a coffee with us. And what we can do is we can actually start mapping out what your plan is. Guys, I'm looking forward to meeting you real soon at either one of our webinars or perhaps a seminar, or if you come to one of our offices around the world. Have a great day, and remember, live with passion.